Welcome to Transforming 45, the podcast that celebrates the incredible power of passionate voices. I'm your host, Lisa Boat. Join me in conversation with heart-led humans who share their deeply personal stories of transformation. Transforming 45 is here to uplift, connect, and remind you it's never too late to write your next chapter. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am so excited to welcome a guest that I actually had in the spring and had a massive tech failure for. I'm grateful that she has decided to return and have the best parts of that conversation again. And there are parts of it that of that original conversation we had that have been just rolling around in my brain, and I can't wait to dive into them. So Sarah Hager of the Zen Den, welcome to Transforming 45. I am so glad that you are here.
Thank you so much for having me again. Like I was saying to you earlier, everything happens for a reason. There's obviously some tidbits that are going to come out today that needed to come out today. So thank you for having me. I'm excited. I am the owner of the Zen Den. I am a Reiki practitioner and intuitive and also a witch. We'll get into that in a little bit. Basically, I'm a survivor of narcissistic abuse and addiction. I had a rough life. And I decided that when I hit 30 that I was going to really make the effort to change that and break those generational curses to stop them from going to my kids and their kids after. So that's how I got here. I do a lot of mentoring. I do a lot of energy work. I just want to help people heal.
That's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. And the work that you do is so powerful. What are the experiences that you had over your life that allow you to show up in this way now?
Well, so I could go way back to even when I was a child. I was very severely bullied in school. I never really fit in, and I never understood why. As a child, I don't think you have the brain capacity to understand why. And then I was homeless at 13, and I'm talking homeless, sleeping in Nathan Phillips Square as a 13-year-old girl. I just thank the universe every day that worse things did not happen to me, because I could never imagine my child going through that. I ended up getting pregnant at 17 with my first son, who's about to be 18 next week, which is really crazy weird for me. And then I had a second son by 21. I married their dad. He was a narcissist. So I spent 16 years in that relationship, really had no idea who I was. When we finally split, I didn't even know what I like to do for fun. And I kind of held myself back. I would have people that would be like, hey, you want to go for coffee or you want to do this? And I would just say no. And when I realized that I was putting these constraints on myself, I was like, no. I ripped those chains off, and it was like this brand new version of me was born. But that led to a relapse, and I relapsed really hard for about a year, because I had been in recovery for about 3 years by the time that me and my ex-husband split. I relapsed really bad. I almost died several times, and I knew that if I didn't stop, I was going to die, and I wasn't quite ready for that. So it's been about 3.5 years I've been on that sobriety journey again, but this time it just feels so differently than it ever has before, because the universe and my spirit guides and all of it, everything that surrounds me has really just supported me while I dug into the reasoning behind why I was acting the way I was acting. Why did I feel the need to use drugs? And digging into that, I've actually removed that. And for the first time in my life, I can sit here and tell you that I will never put another drug. I don't even take Tylenol. I will never even put another drug in my body, another drop of alcohol or medicine, unless I'm dying. Literally dying. I actually waited 5 days to go to the hospital. I had staph infection in my hand. And the doctor was like, you're crazy. And I was like, yeah, I just didn't want to come here and get pumped full of meds. So I dealt with the sore hand. But that really brought me to where I am. And then when I met my current partner, my forever partner, my love of my life, he found me in my mess. I was very addicted when he found me, and he stood beside me and just supported my growth and encouraged me and kept reminding me of who I was And for some reason, everything's faded, right? For some reason, that just pulled me out of the fog. And now I'm here helping other people come out of the fog too. And that's my whole thing. Like if I can pull myself out, because I was the most negative, like if anybody has ever had an addict in their life, they know exactly what I'm speaking about. I was just not who I wanted to be, and I don't know where I was going with that because I'm just like going back in my mind now. But I finally have been able to release all of that hurt, and I'm talking like generational hurt too. My mom and we have a weird relationship. But just releasing that has brought me to here. And I know that if I can do it, you can do it too. And I'm here to hold your hand, and I'm here to make you feel heard and seen, because that's what people want, Lisa. In my experience with working with clients, and I've worked with a lot of clients, people just want to be seen and heard. And I want to be that safe space, and I'm going to cry probably because I never had that. So basically my inspiration for who I am right now is who I needed as a child and I didn't have.
Yeah.
So I'm embarking on like teen wellness workshops and stuff as well, because it's a confusing time. And if you don't really have guidance, and let's face it, who wants guidance from their mom? I know my kids don't. Like, they're like, okay, mom. But I just want to help. I want to help the teens before they get to where I am, so they don't have to go through all that undigging everything out. But anyway, I could talk about this for hours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've just talked about abuse,
A lot.
substance abuse, trauma, and it's in such a grounded and peaceful way. Like that is what's coming through to me as a listener in this moment, is just how smooth your energy is the word.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, I can imagine, because, when you talked about being in a narcissistic relationship, the amount of energy that takes.
Without being aware of that's what it even was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you, narcissist is a term that we hear almost daily in our word.
I feel like they're overused.
Yeah. Can you talk about what that term means to you and how you experienced it?
Okay. So my kid's dad has a lot of untreated mental health issues on top of it. So I am a true believer, working with people of survivors of narcissistic abuse. Really only about 5% of the population is a true narcissist. And I'm going to say about it, the other 95% are just unhealed empaths. So that, and I say that because that's where I was. And I thought for a long time that I was a narcissist. And then I realized, like, I'm not. I was just very unhealed, which they display the same type of traits, right? So when I met my kid's dad, I was homeless. We were both homeless. I got pregnant right away, and we just decided we were going to make a life out of it. And I just kind of accepted, kind of with that old school thought, because I had my parents in my ear, well, you marry the man you have kids with and you stay together for the kids. And I had no idea who I was, girl. I was like 17 years old, and I just embarked on this journey, which I'm thankful for now. In the moment, I really wasn't, which exacerbated my substance abuse because I didn't know how to deal with life. But I didn't realize until towards the end of our relationship that he was actually a narcissist. You want to know why? The funny thing, because there's a very laid out list of what a narcissist is, and he never thought he was better than other people. So no way he could have been a narcissist in my brain. But that's the abused brain talking, right? Because I would still defend him all the time for all the stuff he was doing. I see now that he's just very like unhealed, and all of his behavior was not about me. And once I realized that it wasn't about me, it was this weight lifted off my chest, because not only did I deal with that, my mom is an unhealed empath as well, with very narcissistic traits herself. So I've always been the fixer my whole life, right? I have to make sure I read the room. I feel, where is the energy off? Where do I need to fix it? And it became exhausting. Like, my mother and my ex-husband did not get along. You could tell. They didn't argue all the time, but you could just tell. And I would always be trying to smooth out the energy. And when I finally let go and understand that people do what they do based on their view of their own reality, it was like my whole mindset shifted, and I was able to release that. And I realized that there was nothing wrong with me. I was not doing the things he was accusing me of, but it was actually him doing the things he was accusing me of. So it was just like this whole like aha moment of, holy crap, this isn't me. This isn't about me. This is about him. And funny enough, I did harbor a lot of anger and a lot of resentment towards him for a long time. When we split, he left me with the kids. So that's hard to be a single mom, you know? So I would get in this whole mindset of like, well, you just got to leave and you're lucky. And I was also coming out of my addiction. So like my mind was just crazy. But I ended up going to this breathwork ceremony back in July. I'm actually hosting one here in September again. I'm so excited to do it. It was probably the most transformational healing I've ever done in my life. It cracked me right open. And in the midst of where I was at, I just started sending him love. And I was like, whoa, like, where is this coming from? And then I realized, like, I love him as a human. I don't want to see him suffer no matter what he put me through, because you know what? That's not helping me to wish harm on other people, right? Instead, I turned around and I'm like, you know what? Dude, I'm not going to say his name. Thank you. Thank you for showing me what I needed to learn about myself, what I will never accept again. Just thank you. And he's so baffled by this. He doesn't understand. Why? Because he's still on that same level he's on. And I'm over here like, yeah, dude, we're cool. And he's just
Yeah.
expecting that hate and anger because it was tumultuous. I'm not, also too, going along with narcissistic abuse, reactive abuse, right? So he would get me to the point where he would whisper stuff to me and he would say things and nobody else would around me would hear me. And then I would snap and then I'd end up getting physical with him. And then he'd be like, you're crazy. See how crazy you are. Da, 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 da. So I also felt like I was crazy and I had no like compassion for other people. It just, yeah, narcissistic abuse is a lot. It's a
Yeah.
lot to handle. And especially if you have no idea what's happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you've said a number of really powerful things that we could dig into. But I think the key of it is realizing that someone else's trauma and behavior has nothing to do with you.
Yeah.
Right. And that is a really powerful place of being able to release.
For sure.
One of the mentors that I worked with described, when you were talking about the breath work and all of a sudden sending love, she talked about, those energetic ties that connect us to other people. She talked about, instead of like traditionally we think about cutting those cords, right? But she talked about doing it in a way that is loving release.
Right.
So instead of cutting it, it's just
Just letting it
gently
go.
releasing the end of the cord with love and saying, you are on your journey. And the thing that happens when we're in that cycle of changing ourselves to try to meet the expectations of someone else, and from our perspective, we think that we're trying to help them. But really, all we're doing is changing ourselves and getting in the way of that other person living their journey.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so energy expensive, because we're trying to hold all of this control
Right.
at the end of the day, right?
And secrets. Because nobody really ever knew how bad it was, because like I spent 16 years with him, and by the end, like, I stopped talking to my parents about it. I stopped talking to my friends and my sister, because you know what? I was like, you guys are giving me solid advice and I'm just keeping this cycle going. So I just started to try to pretend like everything was okay. And it was weird because towards the end of that relationship, things were getting like a little bit better. Like he was starting to participate as like a family member. He would come shopping with me, but it wasn't, because on the side of like dealing with this, I'm growing exponentially in my spirit, on my spiritual path. And it wasn't, I don't really feel like it was my human that made that choice. It was my soul that was like, listen, you
Mhm.
have to let this go. And it's funny because we had argued and fought so many times. And I remember the night that was the last night we spent together, and I had come home from Reiki. I was working at a massage clinic, and I was in a great mood. Obviously, Reiki's amazing. And I came home and he was pacing, and I was literally like, oh, just that dread in
Mhm.
your stomach. I'm like, what's wrong? I will spare you of the details, but he had put a phone in my dresser and said that he had recorded me doing whatever he thought I was doing, when really it was the TV in the living room he was hearing. And for some reason, like, we've had many fights like that, but that sparked something in me, and I was hysterical, crying on my bathroom floor. I'm not a woman of like God in the church sense, but I, for the first time in my life, prayed to God, this has to end or I'm going to end, because I can't live like this. And it was like instantaneously, everything calmed down. We went to sleep. And I took him to work the next morning, and it was done. Like, it was just, when you
Mhm.
ask how fast things can come to you, is incredible.
Yeah.
That,
Yes.
And yeah, I'll never forget that. That was like probably like the pivotal change in my life. Because you
Yeah.
got like codependent, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
in the question that you asked for help for yourself,
Yeah.
right? Which so often is what we don't do when we're
Right.
asking for something. We
Right.
ask for it so that I can serve this person. Like
Right.
bring me this thing so I can be in service to you. Bring me this thing so that I can help this person. But the truth is, it's going back to that conversation we had before where we really have to focus on ourselves and our own
That's the
journey.
key. You have to start there. When I
Yeah.
speak to my, when I have a new mentoring student come on board, the first thing I start with them is a spiritual hygiene routine. I just put together a journal. It's on Amazon,
Yeah.
because that is the most important place to start. Is society will have us feel that self-care is selfish. And yeah, it is, but it needs to be, because how am I
Yes.
going to pour to you from my empty cup of resentment when I'm so busy taking care of everybody else, that I don't have time for myself? And now I always put myself first. And guess what? I have enough energy and enough time to help everybody who comes to my door. Whereas before it was getting very overwhelming because I wasn't dealing with what I needed to work through. You have to
Yeah.
very balance, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think when you added the word resentment to empty cup, my empty cup of resentment,
Yeah.
that is so powerful and important because people think like, oh yeah, you can't pour from an empty cup. True, but not only is your cup empty,
It's
but
labeled.
it's labeled and it is holding all of this rage and
Anger.
pain.
Yes. Pain.
Yeah, which is what causes resentment, which is what
Yeah.
makes it so much harder. And if we just try to muscle through that,
Yeah.
it's what we're pouring out is toxic.
Absolutely. Without you even realizing it a lot of the time. And it
Yes.
skews your view on your reality. So now you have this skewed reality view that's going to create what's coming up next for you, because we're creating what we feel, what we see in our reality based on what we feel on the inside. And a lot of people think that what's on the outside is creating how we feel on the inside. And it's not true. It's exactly the opposite, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And before we started this conversation, we'd been talking about how your experiences in this time also are reflective of generational trauma,
100%.
right? So, how have you seen that? How do you know when something is showing up in your world as generational trauma? And then what are you doing to rewrite that story now?
Oh, you just gave me goosebumps, because it's funny. My whole life, like I've always said, like I don't want to be like my mom. So when I feel the generational curses coming out, I feel like I'm my mom. Like I'll say something and I feel like I sound like her, or I have her
Mhm.
mindset. And I just, in the moment, I'm like, whoa, 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 like let's flip the script. And I'm not going to say that this was just like an overnight thing, but like as time goes on, it gets easier for me to be aware of what thoughts are coming in your head. We have something like 80,000 thoughts, and like most of them are repetitive thoughts that we had yesterday. So how do we expect to change anything if we're just continuously thinking the same thoughts over and over again? But even with my own children, whereas, okay, so this is a touchy subject for me. I might get a little teary eyed. So my son just did this program with, the job center. So he got job training, paid job training. He got his first paycheck. Like the smile on this kid's face was just like, he's ready. He's ready to like do the damn thing. And I said to my husband, I'm like, you know what's wild? I said, if that was me at that age and my mom didn't have any cash, she would have took my whole paycheck from me and said like, oh, I'll pay you back or whatever. You know what I mean? So with
Mhm.
my son, he's like telling me how much money he has and what he's doing. And I'm like, listen, babe, that's your paycheck. That's on you. You don't have to tell me what you're doing with your money. And that just felt really good to me, that I could break that generational curse with my children. So it's really, I'm thankful to my mother, because she's taught me how to not be with my children. And that's exactly how you break the curses, right? I tell my children I love them every day. I go out of my way when I'm in a grumpy mood to not bleed onto them. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I'm snappy. It's me. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like we're human.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I'm very aware of how I speak to my children. I'm very aware of how I speak to anybody's children. Children
Yeah.
are drawn to me from all over, and I feel like it's just they can feel my healing presence, and I just want to be everybody's mom, you know?
Mhm.
But definitely I see it with my kids, and I'm so thankful for it. I'm so thankful that she taught me, and I love my mom very much. And I understand where she's coming from. And I understand that the way she was because she has her own traumas and her own hurts. And I think that's important to understand too. Most
Yes.
people and parents don't purposefully hurt their children. They just don't know how to deal with what they're dealing with. And as a child, I didn't see that. I thought she was just mean. But as an adult going through my own journey, I understand now. And I think that helped me to forgive and helped me to release a lot of that anger I had towards her because I can see her from a view of compassion,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know? And, yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that is such an important light to shine
Right.
on relationships that are hard, right? Is knowing that you can both love and care about somebody
I just had to accept
and
her.
yes, and recognize the harm that they have caused in your life and recognize also the harm that they have experienced,
Yeah.
right? Because like you said, people don't come into this world evil and mean.
No, they don't.
It is the culmination of experiences that a human has. And so being able to see someone in their fullness, right? In their wholeness is what allows us to move forward in a way that is both loving and accountable at the same
Right.
time.
Boundaries are key here.
Yes.
Key.
Yeah.
And it's often hard to put in boundaries with somebody that you had in your life, your whole entire life, because they're so used to interacting with you in a certain way. There was a period of 3 years where I didn't speak to my mother because I had to pull back so that I could do my healing in order to forgive her so that we could have a relationship because I was very angry. And then back in June, something happened at a party. My son got stabbed. He was airlifted to Sunnybrook Hospital. He almost died. And the first person I called after not speaking to her for 3 years was my mom. And you know what? This is going to make me cry. She came here and she was here in 10 minutes. She was here in 10 minutes after me not speaking to her. So if that didn't show me anything in that moment, that woman loves me. That woman loves me more than anything, and that was a big shift. My son was okay, by the way. But that was a big shift in another one of my realities. Like this woman, I didn't speak to her for so long. And yet she was the first person. Like my dad was like, oh, sorry, we're camping. I'm like, okay, thanks. She came and we didn't speak on anything that had gone on between us. She literally was just here to support me and help me with Aiden. And that shifted. But also too, like I said, I have boundaries because my mom and me have always had this like dynamic where we just feed into the drama, right? And so I've moved past that. I'm not interested in the drama or what's going on with so-and-so because I don't even know them. I really could care less. But she'll try to engage me and stuff like that. So now me just putting in like, hey, mom, like, I don't even know these people. Like, I don't really care. And so it's kind of showing her that I'm not going to engage in that stuff anymore. Also, too, I don't answer the phone when I don't feel like answering the phone. And I feel like a lot of people feel obligated to answer when somebody's calling. You're not. If you need to call back later, go ahead. You don't always have to answer the phone. So that's been a big thing for me too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's I think when we think about boundaries and setting boundaries for ourselves, we think that it has to be such a big, hard, arduous process.
Oh, for sure.
But that strategy is one that I use as well. Like if I know that I don't have the energy to engage in a conversation for either like for myself or the person on the other end to feel good at the end of it, then I don't answer the phone and I do wait and I call back when I am in a better place.
And that's a form of self-care.
Absolutely. And it's so simple.
Yeah,
right?
It really is. It's the guilt that comes with us. And if you can tackle the guilt as the guilt comes on, because guilt is like the heaviest emotion that we have. Like basically emotions come from love or fear, right? You break it right down to the very bottom. It's either love or it's fear. And the guilt is just such a, like humans spend so much time guilting themselves for shoulda, woulda, coulda. But really you're exactly where you need to be right now all the time. Yeah. Like there's no shoulda, woulda, coulda. So I don't know whoever introduced that type of thinking, but we're not doing that anymore. If you shoulda, then you woulda. You know what I mean? If it was supposed to happen, it would have happened.
Yes. Yeah. No, I know that's one of the things I work on with my clients too, is shifting the word should.
I don't like that word at all.
No. I'm like, no, what do you want?
Yes.
Right? What feels good?
That's okay.
Not,
And that's the key to manifesting. That's the key to creating your reality. Being in
yes.
flow, doing things that make you feel good. Now I understand we're in this 3D world right now. And yes, sometimes we have to do things like go to a job that we don't like, which I will say that you can change that too. But let's start at the beginning here. Sometimes you kind of just have to work your way through it and then make those changes. You know what I mean? It's not like everything is peaches and cream over here. It's that when the big things hit me now, I don't lose myself over it because I know that I've made it thus far. And I always tell myself that when I get really fearful about like the economy or what's going on or business. And I'm like, you know what? The universe did not bring me to where I am right now today to drop me on my face. Like it's not going to happen. And for some reason that just brings me back to center and I keep going. Because trust me,
Yeah.
there's been a few times I wanted to like throw the towel in on this because, you know, owning your own business is crazy wild. Like some weeks I'm making bank and some weeks I'm like, oh dear. But you know, for some reason, I just can't stop. I just can't stop. I can't. This is my
Yeah.
purpose. I went through everything I went through so that I could do this.
Yeah.
I'm thankful.
And when you really start to look back at your story and the tapestry, right, that's being woven, you can
Yeah.
start to pull out those exact pattern changes,
Hmm.
right? Where you're like, oh, that moment is what led me to start weaving this section. And then that's
Yes.
what led me to start weaving this section. And it is the wholeness of the tapestry that gives you this beautiful,
Yeah.
this beautiful piece of art that is what's becoming your life.
Right. And that's also with the shadow work too, integrating all of those areas of my life. At one point, I never would have shared with you what I just shared with you because I was embarrassed. I never
Yeah.
would have admitted to you that I was bullied in school. I never would have admitted to you that I was a drug addict. I never would have admitted any of those things. But yeah, like I just see the beauty in it now. You know?
Hmm.
And the
Yeah.
messages that I get every day from people all over that I help just kind of help me to see the beauty in that too. Because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be able to help people as efficiently as I do now. Like I have the
Hmm.
life experience and I feel like I'm still pretty young to have all that life experience. I have an entire lifetime ahead of me of helping people now.
Yeah. Which is the exciting part,
It's
right?
so
Is
exciting.
knowing, yeah, that you get to continue to write this next chapter and write this next story. And do
Yes.
it with less fear.
No fear. No fear at all, girl. Trust me, this whole thing that's going on, it's just a stage, right? It's just a
Yeah.
show. Whatever
Yes.
happens, happens.
Yep. Absolutely. And it is when we start lifting the curtain on, going back to what you were saying about, I wouldn't have said this before because I was embarrassed.
Yeah,
It's what happens when we lift the curtain on the things that we do that we held shame around for a long
absolutely. A lot of shame because you feel like it's your fault, right?
time. Yeah, absolutely. And there's stories that come with us from other times as well, right? Like you and I were talking earlier about, I've talked about it on this podcast before, like the witch wounds
Yeah.
of the past, which I know is part of my soul's contract and journey in this life, is healing those wounds that the women in my lineage have held for, hundreds and hundreds of
Oh yeah.
years. Yeah. But it's being like, 3 years ago, I wouldn't have come up publicly and said, yes, I'm a witch.
Right.
And yes, that a witch is not a negative term.
Not at
That
all.
is, it is power grounded in nature.
I was just
Like,
gonna say that. What does a witch mean to you, Lisa? Because to
yeah,
me, that's what it is. To me, being a witch means, and I'm also a Taurus, so I'm a very grounded
me
earth
too.
sign. I know, so you get
Of
it.
course.
In the element, in nature. And that's why you enjoy your cottage. It's not necessarily the beautiful cottage, it's the being outside in the nature and the connection. And
Yes.
that's really what being a witch is about. Me and my best friend, who is also super witchy, the Reiki witch, I'm sure you hear me talk about her a lot. We go out and forage for our spell work stuff. And we never
Mhm.
pick from the trees. We only pick from the ground. It's about respecting nature. It's about being one and understanding that we are all one. All of us humans, earth, we're one,
Yes.
and it's about connecting to that. And it's so powerful to connect to that side of myself. Like I feel very powerful, whether I'm doing a big elaborate spell with all kinds of herbs and spices and whatever I'm doing, or I'm lighting a candle and saying, yeah, get your shit together. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I think a lot of people shy away from digging into their witchy roots because the movies in this have made it seem like it has to be this big elaborate thing when it's not, because I know that's what stopped me, and I didn't know if I was doing things properly. And then Sam came to me and was like, listen, it's about your intention. And for some reason, cracked me open. And now, like, girl, I'm doing witchy stuff every day, and my life is improving every single day. And I don't just do it for myself, I do it for the collective, you know?
Yes.
Because that's another big thing. When you actually, I have a card right here. Wanting more for others puts me into the energy of abundance. So when I want more for you, I'm introducing myself to abundance for myself. And people need to understand that, right? When you want better for others, you get better yourself.
Mhm. Absolutely. And that's the power of a coven.
Yeah.
And it is the reason why, like, that is the fundamental reason why the women who were witches were burned,
Yeah.
because of the power that they
Power.
understood of being connected to themselves, connected to the earth, connected to the planet, and connected to each other. Right?
Absolutely.
It is such a beautiful framework for community and for leadership, because it's all about power to and not
Yeah.
power over.
Right.
Right.
I've never wanted to relinquish power so much in my life. And when I was very out of control my entire life, all I wanted was control and power. And now I am nope. Like Adam will always ask me, he's like, what do you want to watch on TV? I'm like, I don't want to make decisions. I don't want to have power over anybody. I just want to be sovereign in myself and worry about me, you know? But that's where
Yes.
the unhealed empath comes from, is the control, like, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And the fear, right? So the other component of being really deeply connected to the earth and to the cyclic nature of our lives, and, you know, living where we live, the cycles of the earth and of the year are so present and obvious.
Absolutely.
And I relish each one for
Every
its own.
single one of them is like, yes.
Even in April, when I'm like, okay, winter, I'm over it. Like, that happens. However, I still, those cycles are so necessary in terms of feeling that connection and releasing. When you watch the sequence of planting, right, of fertilizing, of birth, of life, and of death, when you really watch it and observe it and let yourself be part of it, it allows you to release the fear, which is the fundamental fear of most humans, around what it means when we're not wearing this skin suit anymore.
Oh, this is my favorite subject.
Yeah.
This is my favorite thing. So,
Yeah.
and like I said to you earlier, a lot of people, like, I have a quirky sense of humor, and sometimes I say things and people don't understand my sense of humor, but I often say, like, I'm just done with this planet. I don't even want, I'm ready for the next thing. I'm ready to move on. And people are like, oh my goodness, like, are you okay? And I'm like, girl, I'm good. I'm just saying, I know what is after I leave this meat suit. And I understand that this meat suit is not me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just excited. Death is not a final thing. It's just transformation.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
it's just moving on to the next life.
Yeah.
It's so beautiful. It's so, and I was a PSW for a lot of years. I've worked with a lot of people that were right on their deathbed. I've been with people that have died. I've taken care of bodies as they've passed on. And it's, to me, it's just the most beautiful thing in the world. It's the most beautiful thing.
Yeah, it really is. And I've told this story before on the podcast, but I was the only person with my mom when she died. And I think that was intentional on her part. I think that she wasn't able to let go until it was just she and I together.
Yeah.
And while it was it was the last few days of her life, actually, that were so deeply painful, trying to hold on to this life so tightly.
For you.
And pardon?
For you.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was only 30 and she was 52, and I had,
so young,
little
girl.
babies that she had always wanted to be part of their lives. And she had finally just found some self-actualization. And so she was so mad that she had to leave when she'd finally just accomplished what she wanted. But it was in the moment of her death that there was actually relief. Like, while I knew that I was going to miss her, I was so glad for her that she was no longer suffering.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful. And I remember going from her room to a door of the hospital that looked out into a forest, and there was a river running through. And it had been gray for days. It had been gray and windy and kind of stormy for the last 3 days. And as I stood there watching this river run through the trees, the clouds parted and the sun came out. And I was like, and there it is. This is the cycle that continues to happen. Right? Yeah.
And the energy, like, people don't really know what energy is, for the most part, but understanding that we are energy and all of our loved ones that have passed. And let me tell you, I've lost a lot of people. My generation has been very hit with the drug epidemic, and a lot of the people that I've lost were due to drugs, but their energy is always around us. Like, we can always talk to them. They can hear us. They're here, you know? And if we could just get a grasp on that, I think that, first of all, I feel like death is a very selfish thing for the people left behind. We want them to hold on because we don't want to go through the pain and the suffering, right? But to let go is so beautiful because they're the ones that are suffering. I don't know where I was going with that, but yeah, just knowing that you can, like, the energy is always around you. And often, I'll tell you something really cool that happens to me when I do readings. I don't claim to be like a medium because I don't really know how to turn it on and off. But I'm very intuitive. And sometimes I'll have people that haven't passed on yet come in through a reading because their higher self came to me. And it's usually like people who have like a dementia causing disease or are on their deathbed, because when that happens, I'm a firm believer that you go in between worlds, right? So Judy with dementia to you looks like she's batshit, but she's not. She's actually talking to her sister and her mom and her dog and everybody she's telling you she's talking to, but we just scientifically say that they're losing their minds, but they're not. Their minds expand and open up so that they can come in between worlds.
Yeah, that's a really powerful way of experiencing that.
It's wild.
Because I think it gives people another way to approach that time, right? Instead of trying to say like, no, they're not here, like entering into that world with them and letting it be, which is such a gentler, more authentic way of interacting with somebody who's in that in between.
Girl, dementia care is my favorite thing in the entire world. And if I ever went back to PSW work, that would be where I'm at, because I love that. Girl, tell me about your mom. Tell me where you're going today. Tell me what you're up to and what you're doing, versus being around some PSWs that are like, oh, Bridget, your mom died like 80 years ago. And then all of a sudden you're sending that person right back to that moment. And now they're unconsolable. It's just, it's a very delicate thing. So engage in their world. What harm is it for you to engage in their world, man? It's not.
It's not. Yeah,
meet them
absolutely.
at their level. They taught us how to use forks at one time. If it wasn't for these people, we wouldn't have this country that we have right now. You know, because they built everything and they sacrificed themselves to teaching us like things that we shouldn't ingest because they give us cancer. So you know what I mean? Like it's just like, it's a whole thing, right? Like it's a cycle.
Yeah,
and thank you.
Absolutely.
And thanking them for
the life that they have lived.
Yeah, thank you for showing us what didn't work, and now we can change it so it can be better for us.
Yes,
because I'm telling you, every single room I would go into, news, CNN, news, and I'm like, oh, you guys are so indoctrined, but I understand why, so I'm gonna respect you.
Yes.
Because me telling you at 80 years old what I think about the government is not really going to jive with you because you don't believe that. So it's just going to cause friction, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And it is, I think there's two things that I think are really important in this conversation. And that is, one, the lack of respect and care that really is present for people who are at the end of their lives. I had not experienced in this way until this summer, but my grandmother fell and broke her hip. And she's 92, but let me tell you, she's one of the spiciest women I know.
I love spices.
Well, she's spicy. And she had her hip replaced and was in the hospital for 4 weeks, and it wasn't healing. So they did another MRI, and the hip replacement had fallen apart in the socket. But it took them 4 weeks of her being in pain to really Yeah, to really accept. So then she had another one. She was waiting in the hospital for a place in a rehab facility. I was with her as we went to the rehab facility, and I could not believe the place that they sent her to.
Oh yeah, just
There was zero, and I'm not talking about the staff who work there. Like
right.
they were doing the best they could in
Yeah,
really
which
shitty
is often the case. Yeah,
circumstances. Yeah. But the walls were all banged up. There was no air conditioning. It was the middle of July. They had to move like junk that was around the bed that they were trying to put her in. She ended up being in a room with a woman who screamed all night long. So they moved her from that room into a room with a strange man. There These are human beings who have lived an entire life,
yeah.
and we are treating them like they have
Like
no,
cattle.
yes, like they have no value,
Yeah.
and that we can just like sure put together a man and a woman that have never seen each other. And as I walked into the room to visit her, he was there, door open, going to the bathroom. I was like, where is the dignity for these
Right.
people?
Right.
And it is our fear of death that keeps us in a fear of aging,
Oh, absolutely.
which is what creates this cycle of abuse and lack of care at the end of life.
They're
Where
gonna die
really,
anyway is a lot of the way people look at it. If you've
yes,
ever taken the moment to sit down with somebody who is dying or close to death and ask them questions, like I'm the like I would guess you'd say the black sheep in my family, but I'm the one who sat down with my grandma and my dad's like, I can't believe you asked her that. And I'm like, Graham, like, are you afraid to die? Like, what are your thoughts on death? What do you think happens? And
mm-hmm.
we had this just very candid conversation that I feel like a lot of people are afraid to have that conversation. And 99% of the people I've had that conversation with are ready. They're ready for it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother said to me, Sarah, I've gone through 2 husbands. I'm here alone every single day. Like, I'm ready for when it comes, you know? And that just gave me the ability to kind of be the one to stand there when she passes on. I know that I'm going to be able to stand there kind of as like the sturdy foundation for everybody else around me who doesn't understand what death is.
Yes,
And I feel like
yeah,
I'm going to get some questions on probably why I'm not crying or freaking out, because my grandmother was a very influential woman on my life. She basically raised me for the first 5 years of my life. She means the world to me, but I'm ready to let her go because I know how she's suffering and she's in
yeah,
pain and she doesn't want to be here anymore. And my dad is not taking it as well. He's crying, I don't want my mom to die, which I understand. So it's just like I'm in this really weird like limbo of understanding all of these things, and people don't understand me because I do understand all of these things.
yeah. And that's why there needs to be such a shift around
Absolutely.
our perception, our understanding, and all of our rituals
Yeah.
around death as
Yes.
well, right? Like we need to start weaving it into our daily lives so that we can have those conversations and
Yes.
not have it be scary or frightening or like, no, we can't talk about that.
Right.
It's like this is the cycle of our lives.
And I'm going to
This
catch you
is
on the other side anyway. We have soul families. We come
yes.
back over and over together. When you pass on from this body and you go to back to where we come from, the people that have left before you and your animals and anybody, any soul that you've had a relationship with is there waiting for you and welcoming you.
Mhm.
You know, like
Yeah.
it's, yeah,
It's
but it's just
it's
seen as such a finality. And I feel like society made it that way. They want to make a buck off it too, right? You got to have like the best funeral and you got to do this or you're going to go to whatever hell or whatever. I don't even know about any of that stuff anymore. I don't pay attention to it, but,
no, I know.
um,
Well, it again goes back to being an excellent mechanism of control because if
for
you
sure.
have a population and you keep them afraid
Petrified. Yeah.
of the one thing that is absolutely guaranteed to happen to you in
Yeah.
life,
There's
it's
no
a
avoiding it. We're not getting out here alive
no.
in these bodies.
Exactly.
Alive, but not in these bodies.
No. And if we remove that control mechanism and say, you know what, when I die, this is how you will see me, but it starts breaking down all of the, really strong boxes we have
Absolutely.
created to keep us afraid.
Right.
right? And where if we could even the word, it's time to transform the word death into like transition or something that is more
Absolutely.
reflective of what is true. And then I know, like when I transition, I just want everyone to have a big party. Like,
Exactly. Don't be
let's
sad for me.
let's
I'm not caring.
celebrate this life that I
You
lived.
know? Because
Yeah.
I'm killing it on the other side, doing like whatever I want with whoever I want. Like I get to see
Yes.
everybody that I've ever known in my life. Like don't be sad for me.
Mm-hmm.
And don't be at
Yeah.
my funeral saying that I was always smiling and I had a million friends because it's a lie. And I also think that's funny too that like we don't show up for our people at the end of their lives, but we'll show up at their funeral and just say all these amazing things, but yet you hadn't seen them in years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like come to me while I'm alive.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And share all the beautiful things about someone when they are
So they
alive.
can hear it in person. And
Yeah,
and that helps them to let go and release too.
absolutely.
Because for some reason, a lot of us will hold on until we get permission. I can't tell you how many times I have been with a patient and silently looked them in their eyes and gave them that permission to go.
Hmm.
Whereas obviously I would never say this out loud with family members there because they would never understand me. I'd be out of a job.
Yeah.
But I remember specifically this one woman, I'd never met her in my life, and she was positive for COVID. So we were gowned. I was
Hmm.
sweating. It was bad. And she was freaking, like attacking us, freaking out. And she grabbed my hand and she pulled me close to her. And I looked her in her eyes and I was like, listen, you can go. You don't have to hold on anymore. And she actually passed away like 4 hours later.
Yeah.
And just, I'll never forget that look in her eyes of just the gratitude for somebody saying to her, like, you can let go.
Hmm.
You don't have to
It's
stay.
okay.
It's
It's
okay.
okay.
Ooh, I got goosebumps.
Yeah. And that kind of takes us back to the beginning of our conversation about duality and that multiple things are true at the same time because
Absolutely.
the humans who are here, we will still experience grief because we miss the physical presence of that
Absolutely.
person.
Absolutely. And that's okay. And grief is not linear. And one day you're
Yes.
going to wake up and be happy, and the next day you might not be able to get out of bed because you're sad. And that is okay. It's
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Yeah.
push on. You can work through your grief as it needs to be worked through. It's
Yes.
okay. And people just
Absolutely.
want to hear that, Lisa. It's okay.
It's okay.
And I say that a
And
lot. You're okay. It's
you're
okay.
absolutely. And feeling both things is also okay. You can feel sad because you
Yes.
miss them, and you can feel joy and gratitude for the life that they lived
Yeah.
and the life that they will continue to live. And those things can exist at the same time, and it's okay.
100%. 100%. I love
Yeah.
that. Yes.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much for this conversation. It was even better than the first one.
It really was. Like we touched on a lot just there.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
And so Zen Den, I will make sure that the links for your journals, the Zen Den, ways to
Beauty.
connect with you are all in the show notes of this episode. And I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today, Lisa. I really appreciate it. And we have good conversation. Me and you jive, so it's nice. It's
Yeah,
natural. It flows, right? Thank you so
absolutely.
much for
Yeah,
having
from
me. And
two redheaded Taurus witches.
yeah,
What else could you
girl.
possibly expect?
Exactly.
Thank you for joining me on this transformative journey. Your support means the world. If you resonated with our conversation and want to uplift the Transforming 45 community, here's what you can do. Connect with me about how you can reclaim your own magic. Check the show notes for all the ways you can find me. Subscribe and share. Hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And if you found value here, share it with friends, family, and anyone seeking inspiration. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your words can make a significant impact and help others find their way to these transformative stories. Join the conversation on social media platforms. Follow us on Instagram @LBoat. You can also find me on Facebook and TikTok. And if you know someone whose story could inspire others, reach out and let me know. I love connecting with diverse voices that carry the power to transform lives. Remember, your support fuels my mission to share authentic stories of transformation. Thank you for being part of the Transforming 45 family. Until next time, keep shining your light and embracing your journey.